Test 1, 2, 3. Hello, anybody there? Hello.
Hello.
This is interesting the way this. Hi, Janet. Hi, Sharon.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Let's see.
Morning.
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 Sure is.
Cold this morning. It was 48 degrees at my house.
Wow.
Good morning.
Hi, Sharon.
Morning.
Good morning, Janet. Good morning, Karen, Josh,
Hi,
Morning.
Karen.
Town Committee.
Trying to make sure I can record this.
You're recording.
Okay. I guess we are waiting for Mary and Karen. I guess Karen's somewhere there.
And Peter?
Yeah, Peter too.
You must be at work, Sharon.
I am. I'm covered up. And I have my handy dandy button on
Oh, right.
so everyone can see our faces.
Here we go.
How's your back, Janet? All healed?
I had another shot this summer because the disc above the surgery inflamed and they had to put steroids in it so I was getting numb in my right leg. So the back pain's gone, but the right leg's still numb. It's
Oh, boy.
it's the new normal.
It's been a process.
Yep.
The new norm. Hi, Mary.
Hello,
Mary.
everybody.
Let me know when you guys would like to start.
I think you've got a quorum. Is that right, David?
Yes, we do. Karen's somewhere there. I don't know what's
Oh,
happening.
Peter's coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. I just won't be on video.
Okay,
Morning, Peter.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Peter.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. 1, 2.
All right. Motion to begin the September meeting, 2020 September meeting of Visitor Services and Information Advisory Committee. Anyone second?
Second.
All right. Janet, do you want me to read the script first?
Yes, you have to go through that first.
As a preliminary matter, this Visitor Services and Information Advisory Committee, this is Joshua Gray, Chair of the Visitor Services and Information Advisory Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. One second, sorry. Jean Mann is not present. Claire Hale? No.
Claire has remote learning with her 5-year-old daughter today.
Okay. Mary Malaves?
Here.
Karen McCumber?
Here.
Peter Morrison,
Here.
Sharon Quigley,
Here.
staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Janet Schulte,
Here.
David Sharp.
Here.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda. I didn't think we had any.
Nope.
Good morning. This open meeting of the Visitor Service and Information Advisory Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order on March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirements of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberation of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. For this meeting of the Visitor Services and Information Advisory Committee, this meeting is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting materials, all supporting materials have been provided to members of this body and are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, Joshua Gray, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. All right. And then right onto the agenda. All right. I guess it's the approval of the December 19 minutes. Motion to approve. Can I get a second?
Second.
Minutes for December 2019 are approved. Election of officers, chair and vice chair. Do you want to take that, Janet?
Yes. Do we have any candidates for the position of chair? Josh is going to stand again. Anybody else? All in favor of Josh Gray as chair of the Visitor Services Advisory Committee, please raise your hand.
Aye.
And Karen, are you raising your hand?
I am. Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. you want to take the election of the vice chair?
Sure. Janet spoke with Gene Mann's caretaker recently, and he will be unable to continue with us, unfortunately. So as the vice chair of the committee, that position now needs to be filled. We have, I've reached out to one person, not for the chair, the vice chair position, but to join the committee. That person will be speaking with Janet sometime in the near future. But in the meantime, I believe we need to elect a vice chair. And is anyone interested in that role?
Thank you, Mary.
Yes, but
Thank you, Mary.
the silence was deafening. Yes, I'd be happy to if someone tells me what the vice chair responsibilities are later.
All right.
Give you a call.
All right. So Mary Malaves is now nominated for vice chair. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
And a full vote, probably, right?
Yeah.
So all in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
And Karen,
Aye, yes.
thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mary.
Aaron, did you vote?
All right. Approval of fiscal year 20 annual VSAC report.
David, did you send that out? Maybe I never gave it to you.
No.
We'll have to send it around then and get feedback on it. It's about a paragraph long. It goes in the town's annual report that's printed at the annual town meeting. Sorry about that. It's been a little crazy in the office this week.
Is that something we can just push to the next agenda?
I think it's due at the end of the month.
Oh, right, because of the fall town meeting. All right.
I'll find out though and let you know.
Director's report.
Yeah, we haven't met since last December. That's amazing. Well, we took January off. February, we didn't have a quorum, and the pandemic hit in March. So things were a lot different in the office. And David will give you some of the statistics and facility changes, but I'm going to talk to you about some of the programmatic changes. The first thing that I was asked to do almost as soon as we closed down was to figure out how we were going to open up again. And I started out with creating an economic impact task force, and there was a parallel one at the Chamber of Commerce, and a lot of overlap in the two groups. We met through April and May, and basically identified what some of the problems were. There was a lot of venting about concerns and anxieties and the like. And it quickly became clear to Christy Ferrantella at the Chamber and myself that we needed to find a different way to focus on reopening. So we dissolved our two groups and created an economic recovery task force. That group sent around a survey about what the economic impact of the COVID-19 closures were, and we got some really good baseline data to start working with that helped to inform some of the decisions that the town made. We have recently published a second version of that, just went out last Thursday, and it's due on the 25th, that will show what the delta was between what people expected and what happened, and also the reality of what happened to help us make changes and plans for the fall and winter season. That information goes right up to a group called the Back to Business Work Group, which is primarily staff members in the town who can make the decisions and recommendations to the select board about what policy changes that we need to make. And we made a lot of changes. Well, you see it downtown, all the streets that are closed and the restaurants that are open. There's more of that being planned for the fall as well as traffic lessens. We don't think there's been a significant impact on parking or driving through town as a result of those closures. And everyone that I have spoken to really likes those changes. I'll be interested to hear your comments on them. I can tell you that in mid-April, people thought the lodging industry saw 60% cancellations into the summer, and more than half of the business that had already furloughed or laid off workers. And another 44% had reduced worker hours. Now, we also know there continues to be a staffing problem as a result of the J-1 visa program. So we'll be interested to see how those numbers have played out. And it's one of the reasons why restaurants and stores have reduced hours this summer too. The Back to Business group came up with those recommendations about using parking lots, closing streets, and presented those findings to the select board who had to approve them. They started that conversation at the end of May, and by the end of June, streets were open. That's as fast as I've seen government move on anything in this town. So it was really all people on deck to make that happen. And there have been some really creative responses in addition to closing Cambridge Street, Oak Street, Union Street, Still Dock, and sidewalks all around downtown. The Chicken Box, the Muse, Salt Box, and Kitty's have all done creative outdoor dining as well. So there's a good vibe going on. There are still some adjustments are being made all the time regarding crowds and music, and of course the change in the closing hour in order to reduce downtown traffic and the congregating of people after hours to avoid the spread have all been going on and will continue to be assessed as the inspectors and the licensing department and the police come back to the town with indications of what needs to be tweaked. For the summer, children beach programs were canceled. Our children's beach programs were canceled except for morning yoga and Sunday concerts. And a couple of those couldn't operate because of changes in the size of outdoor crowds permitted as the governor's orders changed at the beginning and at the end of the season. And I don't know the numbers on morning yoga. David might have some information about that. So a lot of that information, a lot of that work that I spent time doing, and it was daily and constant and coming at Christy and me from all sides, really took up most of the time till the end of June. And then in June and July and August, I started writing public service announcements about Nantucket's new normal that Brian Glowacki did for the radio station, ACK-FM. And topics ranged on everything from how to access the restaurants, about taking care of public health, about trash, shopping, signs, businesses, and the fireworks. And the ones that are running this month have to do with the reopening of school and not gathering in large crowds. We might have to write another one of those as a result of the surge in the last week or so, just to keep it in front of people. We also assisted with the distribution of signage around Nantucket. Oh, that was another one of the PSAs, was about for a place that hates signs, we sure have a lot of them right now. And then we were continuing to work on the single-use plastics ban, which I'm happy to say is in place, and the grocery store has found some creative solutions to stocking canned water, which they said they couldn't do a year ago. We are also looking with the select board, thinking about ways to diversify our economy. It became very clear when we shut down just how dependent we were on construction, all the trades that are related to construction and tourism, and that we also knew at the same time that the real estate was seeing a boom in house sales. And we know there are a lot of people here working remotely in their offices in major metropolitan areas. So we're starting to talk about how to capture some of that, promote that over the longer term, which would really have an impact on the kinds of businesses that might support such economic activity. The cultural district came directly under my oversight in July. The renewal begins in January. I'm having conversations with Remain, because they are a major supporter of it, about how to reconsider the role of the districts. Since we really can't be about promoting gatherings, we've got to figure out a way to use this cultural district as a way to promote cultural activity. And maybe the whole model will change, because right now it's based on having partners. And I'm starting to think maybe we need to base it on individuals or the kind of work that the Cultural Council supports in order to support a growth of grassroots growth of cultural activity. Last week, I've been working with the Chamber on some of their Halloween and Nantucket Noel events. We're having a discussion about that at the Select Board tonight again. As a result of the surges that have happened, I think we might see a significant reduction in that kind of gathering activity as a result of the conversation tonight. And I'm also part of a WPI project, the Worcester Polytechnic Institute, about Nantucket's identity. And the question being asked there is how much that we have allowed this spring and summer should be pulled back from next year. Signage, merchandise on the sidewalks, the street closings, and other things that have sort of taken away from that sense of Nantucket as an historic, quaint little place. I don't think everything's going to get pulled back, but I think there's going to be some recommendations on reining some things in a sort of been this kind of mission creep around town that is of concern to some members of administration and the select board. So it's been a wild and crazy ride since March. I have to say, it's been fun at times, and a lot of times I've just come home and gone to bed at 5:30 because it's just exhausting as well. So that's what I've been up to. I'm happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Anyone have any questions, comments?
Thank you, Janet. I think the town did an amazing job navigating. As one who was playing hostess to many of our tourists, I think people felt like it was a wonderful summer, and they absolutely appreciated all the hard work that the town did to provide restaurants and services that were different, but still felt like they were having a Nantucket vacation. I didn't hear any guests complain that they felt like Nantucket had cheated them in any way. I mean, they were spending huge amounts of money to be here, and every one of them seemed very, very excited and happy and engaged with the town. They did miss tours, so that was one thing that I got feedback on that people felt like they would have liked more of. But aside from that, you know, I think you and the select board and the chamber did an amazing job of navigating this awful time for us. So thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, Josh, I have a comment. I agree with Sharon. I mean, I think the town did an amazing job, just because who knew March, April, May, you know, what we're going to be. Janet, I don't know if you want to comment about the future, because I know you're working on fall things, and I'm on that chamber committee for the events as well. So we've been discussing those things, and I think you're right. Things may change after this surge, but I think there's a lot of signage downtown about curbside pickup and numbers and different, you know, parking areas. And I'm hoping that as the outside dining sort of attempts to move inside, that maybe the restaurants that are open through the fall, we could assist them with understanding that signage. Because I don't think that's something that's been publicized a lot, but it may help them to say, oh yeah, we have a special spot for 15 minutes. You can come and pick up things. So just something we may want to put on the radar for future. Just a thought.
Yeah, that came out of the Economic Recovery Task Force, and it never really got pushed out very well, even to the retail shop. So and that's been acknowledged by the licensing group too, that we need to do a better job with that, especially as we move back to curbside and takeout. Thank you.
And Janet, this is Karen. I know that, you know, the guests that have been to my inn have really appreciated the closing of the roads and the kind of European feel of downtown. I consistently get everybody saying, boy, we hope that this is the same next year. So I understand there's a lot of different issues around that, but I mean, to the extent I can just put forward, I think people would be thrilled if we could continue to have some of the potential road closures and or just more outdoor dining, period. People have always wanted to be eating outside, and there just never has been enough of it to begin with. So
I completely agree.
yeah.
Yes.
I had heard, I wrote an article for End Midsummer about, you know, the downtown expansion, and from the restaurant owners, a lot of them said, you know, this move saved them. You know, places like Nautilus and things like that could have only seated 5 people, you know. And of course, it doesn't benefit everyone, but it benefited as many people as the town could make it benefit during that very busy time. I was wondering, you said there'd be new additions coming. Could you speak to that a little bit? I mean, well, what's coming up?
Oh, you mean for the fall?
Yeah.
Yeah, we received the Mass Department of Transportation had a grant program called Shared Streets and Sidewalks, and we got a grant for that provided for some of the Jersey barriers and plants that you see around town, so that it took the burden off the restaurants and we could make it safe. We're putting in a second grant, I think it's going in today, that would bring in some 58 propane heaters. We're gonna get more barriers to close more streets, probably Federal Street, and I think maybe part of India Street for the fall. some of those festoon lights to go across the sidewalks downtown to add more lighting, and propane heaters and propane tanks that will be spaced along to provide some heating for the restaurants and being outside into the, at least through the first weekend in December, I think. So we'll have to see about that. There might have been some other items on there, but mostly it's about helping the restaurants stay open and maybe bringing some more activity to the sidewalks through the winter. So
Great.
that came out of an economic recovery task force meeting that we had last week. So that group continues to meet every now and then as ideas emerge, and we need feedback from different economic sectors. So that's what's coming down.
Great.
If
And
we get the grant.
I mean, of course, this is the town in conjunction with the chamber, but I had heard that Stroll will be expanded to a longer period of time. Is that accurate?
That's the plan right now, would be to expand it starting like over the course of a week, so we could sort of bring people here in batches rather than all at once on Sunday. We were talking about having Santa be in different locations each day, as well as being around on that Saturday, but we won't be able to close Main Street. That's an order of the governor. We can't have any kind of street festival feel to things. But like I said earlier, I think that might get pulled back tonight, some of those elements of it. That will be a different way to promote shopping and dining, but I don't, we'll find out tonight. And red tickets will probably go virtual this year so that you don't have to be present to win, which I think will see a real increase in the number of participants, both buying tickets and then participating in however it is they do it virtually.
Great.
Yeah, they are definitely going to do that.
You guys hear me?
Yep. Peter? Yep.
Yeah, one question I had, I just wondered if you know if anyone is thinking along these lines. This, the constraints that we're feeling because of the pandemic, as I read it now, are not going to disappear by next April or May. We're still going to be living with this thing to some extent, at least the social distancing, I think. And I just wondered, is the time frame for addressing these issues extending beyond just kind of getting us through the fall and maybe into the spring, or is it actually envisioning a summer of 2021 where maybe we have to have, a light version of what we have today just to keep?
Well, I think the governor's orders and the indication that we're not going till phase 4 until there's a vaccination or vaccine are indicative that we're probably going to see some modifications next summer as well, similar to this summer. I know that the church that I'm the moderator of has made a decision not to open until there's a vaccine, or at least we're having conversations like that. So we're easily looking into 2021 before we gather into either one of the sanctuaries. And I think that's being replicated across the faith community, but also as we haven't really had concrete discussions about it, but in the back of everybody's heads that I've talked to, you can hear that reticence that the new normal is probably what we're looking at right now and not a return to what it was before. And I think there's been some good things that have come out of that new normal as well.
Yeah, Ed.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think we've learned some really important things about transformative changes that can be made that we never would have tried if we didn't have the gun to our head. And I'm looking at this and just saying there's kind of a basic law of gravity that applies here, or maybe a law of economics, where, for restaurants to survive, when people can't be seated outside next to each other, their inherent capacity per square foot is down to what, maybe a third or a quarter of what it normally would be, which means they can't survive economically. So in a sense, we're saying if we want all of the restaurants to survive, sort of, we have to have a scenario that envisions the European model, outdoor dining, which leads me to another point, which is maybe we're talking about really establishing permanent kinds of, road closures that make downtown more pedestrian-only zones with some access points and a different mode of transportation to get in and out. I don't know if anybody's thinking that far down You know, but that's kind of where it's all leading. If you want to have a viable tourist economy downtown, then of course you get into the people who may want to live here and work remotely, which is a new kind of economy for the island.
Yeah, and one of the things that, in response to Josh's question that I forgot, was that we're creating a bike park that will hold 100 bicycles between the town building and the old police department where the sheriff is now. And we bought a lot of bricks, and if you walk by there, you'll see it's all dug up, and they're taking some trees and bushes out of there. They'll be able to, like I said, hold 90 bicycles eventually. And the whole idea is to increase bicycle traffic into town rather than cars and parking. So I think that's going to be a cool addition to the downtown area. And one of my much beloved water filling stations is going to go in that area too, if they ever turn public water fountains back on.
Mary,
Well, that's encouraging news. I'm glad to hear people are thinking along those lines, because when we try an experiment that we never would have tried and we see it can work, we ought to learn from it and plan on using the information going forward. That's a really good sign.
Yeah, and let me just add, I think as you move forward, you're going to see, most restaurants, a public street isn't considered their premises for a liquor license. So consequently, this year we had, special things allowed. So as the liquor license renewals start coming up in December, they're going to have to think, what will happen next year. And I think, Janet, you're right. I think this is going to continue all through next year. Maybe some loosening of the numbers, but I know some of the national organizations I've belonged to for, public meetings and conventions, and they're all canceled for next year. They're just because of numbers, and we move from state to state. So that's not just staying in Massachusetts. So I think that's it, which is why I think this curbside numbers for, retail for pickup of food in the fall, if we start getting a cold snap in October, is going to assure some of these restaurants can keep some staff employed, while we, move into colder weather. So I think everyone's on the right track, but I don't think it's going to change next year at all.
go ahead, Sharon.
So aside from outdoor dining, the other thing that I think will help support the restaurants, Janet, I'm sure you're all talking about this, is the whole delivery infrastructure for getting food to people quickly. And right now we have Act Eats, and is there any discussion of somehow supporting restaurants with getting them vehicles or finding services that can deliver food quickly, especially if we have an influx of people that are not here normally, that are working out of their homes, that may not want to cook, that want to support the restaurants and would love, something delivered. Is there anything that the town or any?
I don't think the town is going to purchase vehicles or create a delivery service, but I think the town would encourage. And I know a couple have popped up this summer. There's one called Delivery, as well as Act Eats, and there are a couple of concierges who are doing food delivery as well, and they have direct relationships with the different restaurants. So I think that's an economic opportunity for private citizens in our capitalist economy that I think it's certainly, if anybody's benefited from the pandemic, it's been delivery services, except for our poor United States postal system. But other than that, I mean, look at FedEx had to go out and rent trucks from Budget to make deliveries this summer. And when you see a Budget rental truck, it's usually got a FedEx guy driving it. So I think there are opportunities there for people to pick up that kind of delivery service. And I think the better promotion of the curbside spots will help too this fall as well.
Yeah.
But I also expect we're going to see, like we do every winter, a lot of restaurants closing.
Yeah. I lost the whole, I dropped out, unfortunately, halfway through my question. But so basically, I heard you talk about capitalist economy, but I didn't hear whether or not there was anything else that the town thought we could do to support the restaurants.
I
dropped off.
I started by saying that I don't think the town is going to create a delivery service, but the town would encourage people to create delivery services. And there have been a couple that have popped up besides Act Eats And there are some concierges who are doing, private concierges who are doing pickup and delivery as well. So,
Can I just add to, I can't share all the specifics yet, but I can tell you that Remain, we are talking to Remain about trying to do some kind of mini grant program for businesses, specifically to help them really evolve and innovate around COVID. So there's some
Hopefully
private
that will help.
work underway. Yeah, that we're trying. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you.
If anyone doesn't have any more questions, we'll move on to Visitor Services Coordinator's report.
Okay. I sent you guys a lot of information here, so just bear with me. And I'm just, because we've had 9 months of to catch up here, and so there's some trends that start up here I want to point out. But I'm going to start with January, and when everything was normal. We had 107 visitors, and then our restaurant list was up over last year at 3,229 downloads for the month of January. If you allow me, I'm just going to go through month by month on the stats and then go over the charts that I had sent you about the restaurant list. So February, we had 71 people. That was up over last year. In March, we closed, and as of March 13th, that was our last day. So in between March 1st and March 13th, we had 25 people. And then we closed for the remainder of March, all of April, and then the first part of May. And then we didn't reopen again until May 18th. So in the time that we opened for that last 2 weeks there, we had 25 people. And keep in mind that we normally have staff on in starting mid-April onward. And this year, we did not get staff back until July 1st. So it was just myself and Janet running the show at the office. And the office in May and June was only open Monday through Friday. So here, if you look at the May stats, I added or included last year's total for that time frame. That includes the main office, Straight Wharf, and Greenhound. So you can see there's quite a difference between this year and last year. And then the same thing with June. We had 254 people in June, and then last year, more than 7,000 people in the main office, Straight Wharf, Greenhound, and the airport. And then July is when we reopened with staff on the weekend. I actually rehired back Jane Roach, Jane Hardy, and Susan Burns. The Janes worked the weekends and Susan worked Monday mornings and Friday afternoons, so I can manage other projects while she was there. So it's if you can see, the numbers go up from June. We had 1,308 people in July. And then there's also the numbers for last year comparing to all the locations. And we only kept, because of the virus, we could not open any of the other locations. And so we just stuck with the main office. And one thing I want to point out for July was that of the 1,308 people, we averaged 42 people a day. And then one day we had 82 people as the highest number that day for that month. So it is quite different. And then we get into August, and the numbers increased a little bit to 1528. And we averaged 49 people per day. And then on August 14th, we had our peak of 75 people. So that is how things went with August. And now, the other thing I wanted to, I could stop here if anybody's got any questions about the visitor stats, let me know. So, because I've got some other stuff to continue on.
I have a question. I think it's very curious if you look at just the July numbers and the August numbers for the weekly restaurant list.
Yeah, that I'm going to go over that
Okay.
shortly. So there's some unique information in that. Any other questions before I go on? Okay. So I also included the Memorial Day, July 4th, and Labor Day holidays in comparisons with last year and this year. And it's pretty, it's very obvious that the numbers were down this year for Memorial Day and July 4th. But I found interesting is that Labor Day was strong, just as strong. It was like our busiest time for September, and it's kind of tailed off, but we're still busy on the weekends. But Labor Day was still busy here, and you can also see the numbers compared, with all the locations that was open last year. So, but it's just that people aren't coming in because I'm thinking that we're not getting as many day trippers as we normally would have. We're getting people staying more long-term who already are here and making plans or just coming in to get some ideas. But we're just not getting that short-term traveler coming in. And so the other thing is that we normally have a Cisco brewery van leaving downtown in front of our office every day in the summer, and it's just packed sometimes. But this year the van did not run because of the restrictions that the state put in. So, and then the other thing is that tours were not operating. Gail and Val chose not to do tours because the state puts a restriction at 40% capacity of the van. So that really limits them. And both of them are older and they were concerned about catching COVID. So they declined to not operate this year. So the only other official tour would have been Nantucket Island tours, and they actually started running 2 tours a day and then some fill-up extra tours. But if it were not for them, there would not have been any real tours running this summer. And so on top of that, I added some extra printed material for visitors to use to take away and kind of review and help them make decisions as to what to do on the island that day or the next few days that they're there. So I'd be happy to submit that to you guys if you want to see what I put together. But that's just basically, it's a lot different this year with helping people. And what I didn't mention was that the office being open was radically different. And I don't know if any of you have been in to see what had happened, but we've got this big plastic barrier. All the printed material has been taken off the floor and moved back behind the barrier and put up like a display so that people can see what they want. And then they'll say, I like this, and then I have to pass it through this small pass-through that's over by the side door, because people can only come in from the front door and go out the side door. And there's only 3 people in at a time. So it's quite disconcerting to people who've been here before and seeing that this is so different, and that a lot of them have this habit of turning around and trying to go out the front door, especially when other people are coming in. So we want them to go out the side door. The other thing is that the cell phone charging stations and the seats, the cell phone charging stations have been pulled because of the sharing concerns. and the seats are unavailable for people to sit. So it's basically kind of in and out and try to help them as best as possible in the way that we are set up for. So anyway, any questions at this point? Okay. I'm going to go into the restaurant list because I have charts for this year and last year, and I just want to show you that, you know, as I indicated before, starting in January, our restaurant list started getting downloaded more. And so the first chart I have is January 2020, and so it's kind of runs along about 100 hits a day. And if you look at January 2021, I mean, excuse me, I'm jumping ahead of myself here. January 2019, it's less, it's averaging about 50 to 60 a day at that time. So that's kind of, I don't know why, but it just seems more people have discovered the list at that time of year. Then we get into February, and February 2020, it goes down a little bit and averages about 50 a day, but we had a peak at February 23rd of 105 hits that day. And if you look at the February 2019, we averaged between about 30, 40 a day with a top hit of 48 back in February 25th last year. So that's around the time of school vacation, and people are kind of like trying to figure out what to do. And then we get into March. I'm gonna start with the March 2019 chart, and you can see that they were averaging about 70 a day last year, with a peak of 135 on the 16th of March. And this year, if you look at this year's chart, it starts going up around mid-March with a peak of 207 on the 20th. And it stays up around that time because that's when the lockdowns start happening. So it continues into April. We start getting more hits daily. With this year, on the 24th of April, we had 227 hits, and around that time is successful. Oops. Can you hear me? Oh, shit.
Are you there, David?
Yeah, can you hear me now? Sorry, I hit something on the back. Can you hear me, guys?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, hang on. Okay. Can you see me now?
Nope.
Okay, sorry, I guess I'm gonna have to hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, why don't you finish your report, and then we can take questions.
Yes, thank you, sorry. Okay, so as I was saying about Daffodil Festival being canceled, we had, if you look at April of 2019, the peak was around April 21st with about 218, and it went down during the Daffodil Festival last year. So it's just kind of everybody being here, they're all eating and such. So I'm going to go into May. If you look at May 2020, I don't see 2019. So I apologize if we have didn't include 2019, but the one thing I want to point out for 2020 is the May 20th, we had a peak of 1,277 hits that day. And then the following weekend is Memorial Weekend, which is not as busy as it would have been the previous year. And then what I wanted to really point out was that the June 2020 restaurant list, you could see a peak every week at the release of the updated list, because the list updates every Monday, and it seems like everybody was waiting for that. And then, of course, on June 9th, we had 722 hits that day. And then we get into July with 308 on the 14th, and in August, 209 on the 13th. Now, besides the restaurant list, I kept track of two other key metrics, and one of which was the room list, and the other was the travel and lodging brochure downloads. And both of those dropped off from last year. So everybody's focusing on what is there to eat, and they're not looking for lodging or the daily room list. And so everything else fell off the chart on that. So including like all the other stuff we had posted online. So it's just kind of interesting how everybody seems to have gravitated to the restaurant list, and it's like everybody knows it's there. So I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point. Mary?
I don't have any questions other than to notice that in July this year, there were over 10,000 people looking at the restaurant list. Last year, there were only 1,700. That number just jumped off the page to me. That there were people here looking to eat, but they weren't necessarily looking for lodging. They're probably homeowners or whatever. And the same in August, the number wasn't that high. It was 6,000 for the month compared to 1,300 last year. So those numbers just sort of jumped off the page.
Yeah.
The only thing I will say on that one, Mary, is that we had a lot of people who they weren't going to come unless they knew the restaurants were open. So a lot of what you're seeing there too are folks that were researching in advance before then actually contacting us to actually book, because everybody was booking very close in this year.
Yeah, I agree. And even some of the rental properties had last minute people looking.
Yeah, so I think that was really helpful for them to see it was open.
Yeah, a good note to add. Thanks.
Peter?
Of all the data I've seen from David over the years, this is one that really, I think, tells us something profoundly important. And Sharon, maybe you can comment, because I know you're sort of you got the same marketing outlook, but it looks to me like a naive interpretation of this is that people have figured out a way to handle their accommodations, and if they can't find a place to stay, then they won't come. But those who do come here are utterly preoccupied with enjoying the cuisine here, however they can get it.
Yeah.
And it tells you that if there's one place where we're vulnerable, but also where there are immense opportunities, it's
Food.
seeing to it that people can get, going from the modest to the extravagant, and get the kind of experience they want. And I'm thinking in terms of not just home delivered food, but in-home catering. And, if Nantucket can do one thing well, it should be, if you want to eat, it just depends on how much money you have, and we can cover the complete spectrum. And I think that's the lesson maybe for the chamber to get out of the restaurants, that we have stumbled upon an incredibly important metric here that told us.
You're muted, Peter.
Yeah. Peter, unmute.
Yeah, I completely agree. Did you-
Have the restaurants been exposed to this information? I mean, But you'd think that if they were aware of it, they would lean into it more. I mean, it's like everyone's been saying, it's a pretty profound difference year to year. And so I think it'd be very valuable for each and every one of them to understand that success is going to be found in takeout and all sorts of.
Yeah.
I think takeout's really going to be the thing that's going to save them, anybody that wants to be open in the fall and winter. And also, there was this adage that I always heard, I don't know if anyone else heard, but as a tourist here, I always heard, you go to the vineyard to be seen and you come to Nantucket to eat. And I think, I know I certainly had guests that were calling me in the spring asking me, there were guests that we've had year after year that have houses in the Hamptons, and they said, we can stay here at the beach. If the restaurants aren't open, we're not coming. So what's open? And so there was a lot, to Karen's point, there were a lot of people in advance of arriving who were researching restaurants. And so the restaurants are really critical to our tourist economy. I mean, I think we all knew that, but it isn't just beaches and boating. It's really dining is
So if there's, just the bottom line here is if there's one actionable thing that comes out of this, I think it's to get that message out with the data that David has assembled in some kind of a format that there is recognition on the part of those who are planning for next year. And, when you think about it, it offers all sorts of interesting ideas. Like it could be that there might be 2 or 3 restaurants that would say, we offer a dining experience like none other. It's just a half a dozen, people who come in and they want to have a fine experience, and it's 3 times as expensive because we just don't cater to that many. There's just a whole range of possibilities here that the market might respond to if the message were gotten out widely and in a format that they could appreciate what just the true significance.
May I add one? I'm sorry, Mary, go ahead. You were first.
I just have one question for Janet, and has there been any talk about the Restaurant Association sort of regrouping and coming together? It seems like whenever there's a controversy or an issue on the island, that's when these little trade groups, seem to be able to talk to each other. And I know we've been missing the Restaurant Association, so I didn't know if there was any talk about that.
There's always talk about it, but they never really get together. There are a couple of people that I use to get the word out to other restaurants. And I know Amy Baxter has a pretty good connection to them, and the Chamber's trying to rein them in, but they just don't coordinate as a group. David's back. Although we can get information out to them, there's just no systematic. And like we were talking about the restaurant week last week at the Recovery Task Force meeting, and the restaurants, because they're working on such a slim margin, I'm not going to offer that this year.
Right.
Or offer discounts during restaurant week. Instead, just thinking about a promotion that will say along the lines of come out and continue to support restaurants so we can be back here next year.
I know from the article I referenced that I wrote this summer, I spoke to Orla Lascola a lot, and she had kind of stepped up as the de facto, at least at that time. And she was trying to cobble the association back together, but off the record, she did tell me that it's very difficult to get them all on the same page and working together. So,
At the Chamber, we are, that is a goal now. The good news is that we've had people join the Chamber that have never been members before on the restaurant side. So Sea Grill and some other longstanding folks who do want to become active in it. So there's definitely work underway to try and really get that formalized now. The one other thing I did want to mention, and I don't know how to solve for this, but somebody should. I had guessed this year, single travelers are not uncommon. And I certainly had single travelers who usually enjoy coming and then meeting other folks here and touring around or doing whatever. It was absolutely impossible for them to be able to eat in a restaurant because the restaurants were not taking reservations for one. They weren't going to take up a table. And I get that 100% why that was an issue. But if this does continue into either in the fall and or into next spring, so somebody's going to have to address that somehow, because we're going to lose the opportunity to have those kinds of tourists here. It was really unfortunate. I had one guest in particular, he was really upset and disappointed because he just could not go out to eat anywhere. He ended up eating in our garden every night, taking out. Yeah.
I'd like to add to
Wow.
that because we get a lot of people coming in for the day saying, where do I go eat for, where can I make a reservation for dinner or so? And in my experience, it's been very hard to find, to make a reservation because of the limited seating. And a lot of people seem to have made advanced reservations like a week or two out. And with the capacity as limited as it is, you're just not gonna be able to find anything short notice for a place requires reservations. And if you go to, let's say, the Brotherhood or Charlie Noble, you might be able to find something when you walk in. But other people are looking for, let's say, the Ship's Inn or Languedoc, and they're in the same boat. They're not able to find it, and I'm getting that feedback here too.
Janet, are we constrained to a 1 hour or
I don't know, David, do you know?
Hour and a half.
hour and a half?
Well, we'll get some kind of analysis done or report done and get it to the restaurants. And I also want to share it with the select board in some fashion too, so that they can see the impact of that some of the work that they've done this year is having a very positive impact, but there are also still issues that need to be addressed. And I've heard from friends who are coming here as singletons that they have not been able to get reservations
I
in
think
restaurants as well.
we still suffer from, to some degree, the mentality of certain people to make 3 reservations and only use 1. I know
Yeah.
some restaurants have started taking credit cards at the point of the reservation point to just ensure that doesn't happen. But I'm sure, once some people probably just don't care if they lose $20 or whatever, $50 off of, a shirt reservation. But that's something to think about too.
Josh, I'd like to add to that because when these places do require a credit card, they'll let you cancel up to like an hour before. Otherwise they'll hit you up with that $25 or $30 or
Right.
$50.
Yeah. Anybody have any other? Sharon, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, so I had a horrible summer, I have to say. It was the worst season here because of the restaurant challenges. And I didn't have singles. I had families who couldn't book anything because they wanted reservations, and there was no casual dining place that would take a reservation. I had guests who asked me to do multiple bookings, and I refused in many cases, telling them. And the guests were a little relentless about the dining, and the restaurants were as well. And it was a very, very hard season for those of us. I don't know, Karen, how much you dealt with it, but it was just awful. The restaurants started taking credit cards, which I think was a good idea because it put pressure on them, but also it was very, very hard to book. There were not enough seats for the number of people that were on island. And if we lose more restaurants, we're going to continue with that challenge. And I don't know that there's a solution, but I felt like there was a shortage of seats to get people into, not just for the singles, but for the families, for everybody. And people who came and, even 2 days in advance, I couldn't book them places that they wanted. I don't know, Karen, I guess, is the only other one on this committee that was doing, maybe you were, David, doing active restaurant reservations, but it was a brutal season for trying to get people fed. And it's not going to get easier if we, and people were not happy. They were frustrated with me. They were frustrated with the restaurants. They couldn't understand why they couldn't book a week out or 2 weeks out or 3 weeks out like they normally do. So I don't have a solution, but I think it's a problem. And if we have another summer like this, we could lose we could lose some of our tourists.
I agree, Sharon. We ran into that same thing where I had to, I gave them recommendations, but I would not make any phone calls because I was not going to provide their credit card out, nor was I going to make a commitment for a cancellation fee. And it was very difficult because each of them had very different policies also about the reservations, everything from none to a day out, to a week out, to online, to not online. And again, I get it. I get everything that they had to deal with, but I agree that there definitely was not enough for anybody. Yes.
And the policies changed throughout the summer. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'd explained one thing to one set of guests, and then by the time they got here, the policy was totally different for the restaurant. And the restaurants were not able to keep us updated on what the policy changes. Thank God Visitor Services was doing that list because that was my lifeline. But the restaurants themselves couldn't get them on the phone. You couldn't clarify anything. They couldn't keep up with their emails. It was a nightmare of a system.
Anyone else?
Can we talk a little bit about the next meeting, the next meetings for the year? I'd like to go back and continue with the bringing guest speakers in, and can work on a list about who we want to bring in. But I think one person I'd like to have us join us early on is the chair of the Cultural Council, which is different from the Cultural District, to talk about how we're planning to work together.
Okay. Yeah. And I think sooner than later, it'd be great to hear from some leaders in the restaurant industry too.
Yeah.
Like their feelings on the future. And I know a lot
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. That, you know, we get a few of them to come and talk to us.
If you have 3 restaurant owners in the room, you're going to have 5 opinions.
Right.
Could I make one
Maybe we can get them
suggestion?
to
If we're
agree
gonna
on
get
one
somebody-
thing moving forward.
Can I make one suggestion? If we do have somebody from the restaurant industry or a panel of them, it would be a good idea to maybe prime them with the notion that we are especially anxious to identify a solution to the problem of people's frustration, not being able to enjoy, not being able to execute the plan they had in mind about fine dining experiences, having a reservation they can count on. There's got to be some way to solve this, some ingenious way that can be coordinated so that when people say, I want to make a commitment, I want to do this, and it may be partly that we have to alert them that the way to do it is a centralized booking or something that would work. If we could get them to tell us what they need, we might be able to think.
True. Do you want to talk about the next date, Janet, or do you just want to set up all of them immediately?
Generally, we were the second Tuesday of the month, but because there are so many, everybody's doing Zoom and there are limited accounts. David, we could go back to that second Tuesday at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
We need to do it before we open the office because it's just David and me, and we need to be greeting visitors. So I guess this next Tuesday would be the 13th of October.
Yep, the 13th.
Okay,
Does that work for everybody?
that's fine with me.
So David, if you can see if we can book that, and if we can't, then we'll work with Josh to find another date.
Okay.
And I've got to get the FY20 visitor VSAC report around to everybody for review if we can't do it at the next meeting.
Okay. Yes, sure.
So one final thing that completely unrelated to COVID and all the challenges that, you know, looking to the future for the island, one of the things that the hotel tries to do is find ways to encourage fall visitation. And we are experimenting with a very small event following the guidelines set out by the governor this year. It'll probably be no more than like 15 or 20 people. But we're trying to do a folk art weekend over Columbus Day. And so I think in the fall, the demographic is a lot of empty nesters who are looking for more cultural things. And so we are experimenting with a little event called a folk art weekend, where we're collaborating with the Basket Museum and Mary Lacourcier from the 1800s House to have a couple of speakers about some of the Nantucket folk art, like basket weaving and doing floor cloth, transferware, sailor valentines, scrimshaw. And I know that we don't have anything like that currently as an event. Did the island at any point have a weekend that was dedicated to the historic folk arts that are unique to Nantucket?
Back in the dark ages, we had all sorts of events that would go weekly, going way, way back even with the Nantucket School of Needlery. And we used to have classes with them. But yes, and I can't remember what the title of it was, but there were things that did create sort of fall week-long events. So people could sign up and take classes. And they were small group classes. I can't remember what the title of it was, but it was in October.
Yeah, so we're trying, just to let you know, we're trying a very, very small, we have a ballroom, so we can spread out and put people at individual tables and have the person lecturing from the front and be very distant and masked and everything. But I just wanted to let people know that we were trying here to see if we could resurrect something, because it seems to me that this is a kind of what makes Nantucket unique, and it could be helpful in the future once we're past this whole COVID thing, maybe in a year or two, thinking about doing something collectively around Nantucket folk arts.
Great.
Get us the information when you got it finalized so we can put it on the on our boards and let people know.
Okay.
Okay, great.
All right, everyone. Unless there's anything else, I'll motion to adjourn. Second, anyone?
Second.
All right. We'll talk to you all in October.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
I have a Zoom tidbit for a few of you. Did you know if you're on mute and on a laptop, if you hit the space bar, your mic goes away, and then you release the space bar?
Oh,
I learned that on a major Zoom meeting the other day with 100 and some odd people, because people were looking for mouses, they were looking on their laptops, and they weren't really good with changing the mic. But your space bar in a laptop will take your mic off, and then when you release the space bar.
all right. Good tip.
Thanks, Mary.
Okay.
Bye all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.